Welcome back to Paul's Tech News. We have come to it at last, the final tech news of 2025. We did it, everyone. Every last bit of tech that happened in 2025 was newsed on this show. And since nothing ever happens in the last 10 days of December, I'd say we're pretty much in the clear. Or we will be once I dispense with this final past week's headlines. And they are: RAM crisis continues. All the prices are going up. AI. Just a shit show. A stupid, ongoing fucking shit show that, quite frankly, none of us deserve to be subjected to. Which is why I'm glad that this is the last tech news for a bit. Just a brief hiatus so we can relax and get some family time in, enjoy Christmas, holidays, New Year's, all that good stuff. And then this award-winning series will return after CES week in January, when all the recent bad news will surely have blown over. Of course, I will be posting other videos between now and then, including on-location CES coverage, so subscribe and stuff, because RAM isn't the only thing getting scarcer as the end of 2025 approaches. So is tech news.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by the Paul's Hardware store on paulshardware.net, the only official source for Paul's Hardware merchandise. Tantalizing t-shirts, brilliant beer sets, high-quality hoodies, and more, all featuring the classic thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers, or the 8-bit thumbscrew for tasteful and refined viewers who hate curves. New designs are added sporadically and at random, so head over to paulshardware.net and get some of that sweet merch right now. Or not right now, after you watch the video. Either way. It is as we feared. GPUs are probably also going to get more expensive in coming months, particularly if this rumor is true. A 30 to 40% reduction in output for Nvidia GeForce GPUs in the first half of 2026 versus 2025. And thanks to our firm grasp of economics, we know that if supply is reduced, but demand stays the same, prices go up. This is per rumors from the BenchLife and Board Channel's websites over in China, where early industry news often crops up. So while unofficial, it does track with market trends. The reason Nvidia might be cutting back is memory shortages due to outsized AI demand, which obviously leaves Nvidia with no choice but to sacrifice their consumer products so they can focus on enterprise GPUs that sell at much higher margins, because money is truly all that matters in this world. So as one might expect, the first GPUs to see reduced output will apparently be the RTX 5060 Ti 16GB and the RTX 5070 Ti 16GB, both of which offer the most VRAM per dollar in their price ranges, and both of which have more expensive options that Nvidia likely hopes will be our only alternatives: the RTX 5070 with only 12GB of VRAM, or the 16GB RTX 5080, which occasionally even sells for its $1,000 MSRP. This means that in just a few short months recently, we've gone from RTX 50 Super GPU launch hype, when those cards were expected to launch or be announced in late 2025, to the 50 Supers being pushed to early 2026, to them now probably never launching at all, and existing cards getting even more expensive. Thanks, AI. The feeble and downtrodden PC hardware enthusiast masses turned to the RAM manufacturers themselves this week, seeking for some faint hint of optimism or hope in these dark times. But since the likes of SK Hynix and Samsung started off this month saying, I don't know, we're gonna wait things out, don't want to overextend ourselves by aggressively expanding our output capacity because that could risk oversupply in the future. Boo-hoo, and not much has really changed in the past couple weeks. Per Notebook Check, Samsung has raised DDR5 contract prices by over 100% because they're out of DDR5 apparently, so at least no one can buy any at these new higher prices. SK Hynix released a bizarrely contradictory statement that they completed 2 years of construction on their new M15X fab. Oh, so good. Completed construction means it's churning out memory chips now. The M15X fab dedicated to HBM production is set to begin full-scale mass production next year. So it's just going to be making memory for AI data centers, and the word completed no longer has any meaning. Gotcha. G-Skill was also super helpful with their public statement, which I'll paraphrase as, shit's expensive because of AI, you guys, and they cap it off with, purchasers should be mindful of the pricing before purchasing. Thank you. Good call, G-Skill. I will now make a note to look at prices of things before I buy them. sage advice. Kingston's data center SSD business manager Cameron Crandall seemed to at least be trying to help in this full nerd interview by recommending that people buy now because things will be getting worse in 2026, which is either a stark reality that we all must face or a continuation of the narrative that pushes prices and margins up for the products that Kingston sells. Though to be fair, Kingston, like G.Skill and Corsair and many other RAM manufacturers who assemble modules but do not fabricate the memory chips themselves, are also subject to the wild swings in pricing that come from the big three, SK Hynix, Micron, and Samsung. Which is also why RAM shenanigans are already being reported, with bribery claims under investigation in Taiwan, per Digitimes, because there's a frenzy to obtain the scant few chips that are available. A little kickback to seal the deal between PMs seems almost natural, but it is technically illegal, so Samsung says they're investigating, and I'm sure the perpetrators will be brought to swift justice. Speaking of RAM shenanigans, it's happening on the consumer market too, and this probably won't be the last time you hear about counterfeit RAM kits, but it's something that every PC hardware enthusiast should be wary of. VideoCardz reports that one of their readers in Spain discovered one of 4 ADATA XPG Caster 32GB DDR5 6000 kits purchased as new from Amazon was tricksy and false, in fact containing 2 much older DDR1 modules with stickers applied and a metal weight added for some heft. A scandalized ADATA followed up with a statement and providing a landing page with advice on avoiding RAM scams, such as buying from authorized partners and making sure labeling is correct, but that's of limited help when authorized partners are typically the ones with the highest jacked up prices, and online sales rarely allow you to actually view the physical product that you're buying. Now this incident appears to be RMA fraud, where a scammer buys a product and then returns a fake which isn't caught during the online retailer's RMA processing and then gets resold as new. I'm curious if we'll end up seeing an uptick in distribution fraud though, which is less common, with the classic example being the fake Core i7-920 scandal that Newegg experienced in 2010, where an entire 300-unit pallet of CPUs was purchased from a shady distributor, and thanks to ingeniously engineered fake heat spreaders and even dummy heatsink fans, were not discovered until customers started receiving them, leading to a very justified online outcry. However these scams happen, they will happen again, particularly with prices running so high, which is why too good to be true deals should be heavily scrutinized, and you should always at least try to buy from an established seller with a good consumer protection policy. Moving along to the final tech briefs of 2025, I'm going to try to steer things towards positive tech news and avoid much further reference to the RAM shortage and AI stuff. Next-gen CPU architecture is always exciting, and late-breaking Zen 6 news came through on Friday. Under the hood, updates include FP16 support and changes to the memory profiler and integer scheduler, and it looks like Zen 6 is on track for late 2026 release, though other rumors, such as 12-core chiplets instead of 8 for up to 24-core CPUs, L3 cache getting up to 48 megabytes instead of 32, and 7 GHz clock speeds are still unconfirmed. 2 other AMD CPUs were in the news this week, for other reasons. First, the AM4 gaming champion, the 5800X3D, had a somewhat short run from 2022 to 2024 before stock dried up, and its replacement, 5700X3D, is now tough to find as well, at least at reasonable prices. But AM4 CPUs use DDR4 memory, and DDR4 prices are bad too, but not as bad as DDR5, meaning that if 5800X3Ds or 5700X3Ds were readily available, it could be a cost-effective alternative for PC building during these trying times. So let's all poke AMD on social media platforms and stuff to see if they might consider spinning up some more 5800X3Ds for us. Couldn't hurt, right? The alternative is chips like the 9850X3D, which is expected to debut at CES, which now has some early price leaks putting it at around $550, or $70 or so above the 9800X3D without the extra 50. But with the added cost of a requisite DDR5 kit, that's a hefty premium to build on AM5, and alternatives would be greatly appreciated. Somewhat amusingly, there's a new motherboard getting some attention for a great feat of engineering this week. Mac's son has wedged 4 full-sized DDR5 memory slots onto a Mini-ITX motherboard, a rare feat and even rarer considering Mini-ITX boards that have done this in the past used laptop SODIMMs instead of the full-sized desktop variety. They did this by rotating the CPU socket and going with just a x4 PCI Express slot, but two things severely detract from this board, specifically dubbed the MSPC Farm B860i. It's an Intel LGA 1851 board. Yes, that sucks inherently, but also, as you might have already figured out, with DDR5 prices as they are, the prospect of filling all 4 of these DIMM slots is not a happy one. A 4-stick kit is likely to eclipse the cost of the motherboard and CPU together, to say nothing of the rest of the parts you'd need to complete a PC. Lastly, to end on a bit of a happier note, albeit thanks to Schadenfreude, we have a big L for AI and AI slop. YouTube has shut down 2 prominent channels that were churning out AI-generated movie trailers, Screen Culture and KH Studio, who had over 2 million subscribers combined. Yes, they were given a warning and were demonetized earlier this year, but then they supposedly complied with YouTube guidelines by adding fan trailer, parody, or concept trailer to their titles. But then those titles got mysteriously retconned to remove those disclosures, because the owners of these channels obviously wanted to trick people into thinking their AI slop was real, and so YouTube wielded the ban hammer and terminated them completely. And I'm not even saying AI-generated garbage like this is all bad, but it needs to be disclosed, and attitudes like that of Screen Culture's founder Nikhil P. Chaudhuri, who bragged that his team of a dozen editors exploited YouTube's algorithm by being early with fake trailers and constantly iterating with videos, should be met with scorn and derision, because soulless AI garbage has already flooded way too much of the internet. At least in this case, good job, YouTube. But there you have it, guys. Tech news for the week, and indeed, tech news for the year. And I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has watched these videos in 2025. As always, if you liked it, click that like button or leave me a comment down below. While you're down there, all of the articles I talked about today are linked in the video's description if you're interested, and you can check out my store at paulshardware.net for high-quality merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, beer sets, and more. End of the year sale still going on. Subscribing to my channel is always a good call too. Thanks again, everyone. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and Happy New Year. Tech news will return in January.